Today, we are diving into the secret blueprints of a man whose mind, well, it operated on a completely different frequency than the rest of us, Nikola Tesla. And we're talking about inventions so powerful, so downright terrifying, they sound like they've been ripped straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around that for a second. A beam of pure energy that can melt an airplane out of the sky from hundreds of kilometers away. Or imagine an invisible electric fence around a country that could just, poof, vaporize anyone who tried to cross it. This isn't a movie plot. These were the very real claims of one incredible mind.
So we're going to unpack three of his most staggering ideas. First, you've got the so-called death ray. Then, there's an earthquake machine that he claimed was small enough to fit in his pocket. And if that's not enough, how about a device to create artificial tidal waves? The real question isn't just how he came up with this stuff, but why.
And get this story. Tesla claimed that one day he attached one of these little pocket-sized devices to the Brooklyn Bridge, and it created vibrations so intense the entire structure nearly came crashing down. I mean, what kind of person even thinks of that? To really understand the inventions, we've got to understand the man.
So, to get a handle on his almost mythical inventions, we have to go right back to the beginning. Back to a kid who was, let's just say, not like the others.
Yeah, from a very young age, Nikola Tesla was different. While other kids were outside playing, he was inside, completely devouring complex science books and logarithmic tables for fun. But his parents, especially his dad, they had a totally different plan for him. He was supposed to become a priest. You have to remember, his father had already lost one son in a tragic accident, and he was terrified of losing Nikola to the dangerous, unpredictable world of science.
And then, fate took a dramatic turn. Tesla gets hit with cholera, and he's so sick, everyone thinks he's on his deathbed. So, in a moment of desperation, he makes a bargain with his dad. He says, "I have one condition to keep fighting for my life. You have to let me study engineering." His father, faced with the horror of losing another son, finally agrees. And believe it or not, just days later, Tesla makes a miraculous recovery. His path was set.
So, after finishing school, Tesla steps onto the world stage, and this is where we get one of the most famous rivalries in the history of science. This is where he was going to prove he wasn't just some dreamer, he was an absolute revolutionary. So when Tesla got to America, he immediately went to work for the one and only Thomas Edison, but they clashed big time. See, Edison was all in on direct current, or DC, which was fine, but it was super inefficient over long distances. Tesla comes along with a much better idea, alternating current, or AC. It was a game changer that could power whole cities way more effectively. Edison pretty much laughed him out of the room, so Tesla quit to go prove him wrong.
And guess what? Tesla was absolutely right. AC was way more efficient, and it's the very same system we still use to power our entire world today. This huge win cemented his reputation as a genius. And now that he had the world's attention, the floodgates of his incredible mind were about to burst wide open.
But here's the thing. Even with all this amazing public success, there was this private turmoil brewing inside him. A really deep-seated grief that would, weirdly enough, fuel some of his most imaginative and futuristic ideas.
You know, when someone goes through a major personal tragedy, the emotional fallout can be just overwhelming. Some research suggests that around 40% of people experience what they call a grief coaster, this long period of extreme ups and downs. And well, Nikola Tesla was definitely in that group.
Remember that brother his father had lost all those years ago? Tesla was incredibly close to him, and that memory haunted him his entire life. It got so bad that for a while he just became a recluse. He completely stopped talking to people. It was a really dark time for him, but out of that darkness came this unbelievable flash of inspiration. He was so tormented by the images and memories in his own head, he started imagining a piece of technology to get them out. The idea was as simple as it was profound. He figured when we think of something, an image forms on our retina. So what if a device could read that image and project it onto a screen for everyone to see? He couldn't build it back then, of course, but get this. Today, scientists are using AI to reconstruct images directly from people's brainwaves. He was literally a century ahead of his time.
All right, now we're going to pivot from inventions of the mind to inventions of pure, raw, physical power. And this is where we get to his most destructive creations, which, ironically, he designed with the goal of ending all war, forever.
This is such a fascinating leap in logic. So Tesla was working on a way to transmit electricity wirelessly. He built this little steam-powered oscillator to experiment with. But when he switched it on, his entire building started shaking violently, like a massive earthquake had just hit. He had accidentally stumbled onto an incredibly powerful physical principle.
And that principle is called resonance, or natural frequency. Basically, every single object, from a wine glass to a skyscraper to a bridge, has a specific frequency that it likes to vibrate at. If you can match that exact frequency with an outside vibration, you can amplify the effect, exponentially, with some pretty destructive results.
You've all seen this in cartoons, right? The opera singer who shatters a glass with just their voice. It's not actually about how loud they are, it's about hitting the perfect note, the glass's natural frequency. The sound waves make the glass vibrate more and more violently until it just can't take it anymore and shatters. Tesla's machine was like an opera singer for buildings, for bridges, maybe even for the planet itself.
So, what do you do when you discover that kind of power? Well, Tesla had lived through both World War I and World War II. He watched over 120 million people die. He became absolutely convinced that the only way to stop us from destroying ourselves was to create a weapon so terrible, so final, that no nation would ever dare to start a war again. A weapon for ultimate deterrence.
And he came up with two. First, the artificial tidal wave. Basically, you'd set off a series of underwater explosives to create a 40-meter wall of water that could wipe out an entire naval fleet in an instant. And second, the big one, the Teleforce, or as the press called it, the death ray, a silent particle beam that he claimed could vaporize armies and shoot down aircraft from 400 kilometers away.
And this all brings us to the end of his life, a time that's just shrouded in mystery, where his grandest claims collided with the hard reality of a skeptical world, leaving us with way more questions than answers.
He pitched his death ray to both the US and the Russian governments, but they just wrote him off. They said it was a pipe dream, a fantasy, no funding. But Tesla was adamant. He insisted that this impossible weapon that everyone was laughing at, he had already built a working prototype, and the world was just waiting for him to prove it.
But he never got the chance. He died alone, in a hotel room, under some pretty mysterious circumstances. And this is the ultimate paradox of his life, isn't it? How does a man who holds over 300 patents die completely broke? How did so many of his world-changing inventions end up credited to other people? And maybe the biggest question of all? After he died, his research, the blueprints for his final, terrifying inventions, they just vanished. What happened to them?
So, what was he in the end? A genius who could literally see the future? A madman whose imagination finally got the better of him? Or was he a true visionary with ideas that were just too powerful and maybe too dangerous for his time? That right there is the enigma of Nikola Tesla.